I'd say it was in 1997. I was already an ordained Unity minister, but I was living at Ananda Village in Northern California. I was wanting to deepen my understanding of the yoga master Paramahansa Yogananda's teachings and to be in a community of people who were actually practicing those teachings. And while I was there, I managed to set up a meeting with the leader of the community, who had been a direct student of Paramahansa Yogananda. He lived in Yogananda's monastery the last 3.5 years of Yogananda's life. His name was Swami Kriyananda. He had started Ananda and developed communities around the world and had written many, many books. And I happened to be able to, through going through several different channels, set up this meeting with him, in which I asked him several questions. One of the questions had to do with the fact that I had been trying to practice being content in my life, living in the community and doing the little things that I did. I did all kinds of things, from cooking to digging ditches to cleaning toilets to welcoming guests to doing all different things. And I told him, you know, recently I was trying to just think about God all day, just repeating God's name and just trying to be content by thinking about God. And I got bored. But when I was going to go skiing at Lake Tahoe, which was 1.5 hours away, I got all excited. And we went to Lake Tahoe and went skiing, and it was wonderful. And he said to me, Justin, your path is not God in a cave. Your path is God through things. To enjoy God through things. And as I thought about that, I thought, oh, what does he mean by that? That's pretty deep. In other words, there have been people who can be content with just being in a cave, meditating, just communing with God. But he was telling me, Justin, that's not your path. Your path is to enjoy God through the world. Like skiing, going on a mountain and skiing and enjoying God's beauty and enjoying the activity of skiing and the wind and the sun and the mountains and being with your friend going down the slope. That's your path. The other thing he said was, follow your enthusiasm. The word enthusiasm, as you've probably heard, entheos, of God. That was very helpful for me. Follow my enthusiasm. What do I feel excited about? What do I feel enthusiastic about? You see, for years I struggled with the idea of Eastern idea of not having desires, being desireless, versus the metaphysical idea of desires being from God. And today I want to hopefully give some clarification about that. If you are like how I was, struggling with the two. Now that's connected, I believe, with contentment. Contentment. You know, contentment has been referred to as the supreme virtue. And there's an old maxim that if you have contentment, a contented mind is a continual feast. So I struggle with it too, because on the one hand, you have the idea that go after your goals, go after your dreams, and you have people who spend their lives struggling and striving only to achieve a goal, and when that's done, another goal. And so it's like restless striving the whole life and never arriving. In a way, never really living the moment, living in absentia, because you're never really here. You're never really enjoying what's in front of you. You're always looking for something else. You're living on someday I'll. Someday I'll be happy. When I have the partner, when I have enough money, when I have the job, when I'm famous, whatever, always someday I'll, someday. And the someday never gets here. And then people come to the end of their life like, well, now I get to go to heaven. When I go to heaven. And then you have the yogi saying, no. Desires are endless. You fulfill one desire, and there's always going to be another one. And it's just endless. On the other hand, you have Unity and other metaphysicians saying that desire is good. Desire is from God. Emily Cady, who wrote Lessons in Truth, a classic Unity book, said that desire is God tapping on the door of your heart, of your consciousness. That desire is of God. You have Napoleon Hill, who wrote Think and Grow Rich, who said one of the keys to the 500 most successful people in his day was that they had a burning desire to accomplish something. On the one hand, you can chase desires and never be satisfied. And on the other hand, desire is of God. Anybody else get confused by that? And you have traditional Christians who have heard St. Paul say, I have learned in whatever situation I find myself to be content. And the man was in prison, he was shipwrecked, he was persecuted, and he had difficult times. And he also said, in all things give thanks. So you have a lot of Christians who believe that they've got to live with whatever situation they have and not try to change it, to just be content with it. You're broke? Be satisfied. Be grateful. You're in a difficult situation, difficult job, difficult marriage, difficult relationship. Just know that it's God's will and just learn to be happy in it. Be grateful. So even in traditional Christianity, there's that belief system. So I'm going to share with you now what I think and find is helpful to me, and hopefully is helpful to you. It's not one or the other. It's both. It's not one or the other. It's both. It's learning to be content and happy in our daily life. But also, when you're connected with Spirit, when you're connected with God, you will get desires and impulses of what Spirit wants to do through you. And that if you're in a situation that's difficult and you've practiced being content and being happy in it, and you're praying about it, but you feel like you want something else, you want to improve the situation, that's fine also. For instance, desire for things. In Psalms 20, verse 4, this is one of many in the scripture that supports having desires. It says, may he give you what you desire and make all your plans succeed. There's a story of Elijah in the Hebrew Bible where his disciples were complaining to him that their space was too small. They didn't have enough room. And he said, okay, We want a bigger space. He said, okay, go ahead, get a bigger space. And they said, well, we want you to also come with us with your stewards. And he said, all right, I'll bring my stewards to help you. There you have people who had a desire. Their space was too confining, and they wanted a bigger space. And he said, fine. He didn't say, just be content with your small, crowded space. He said, that's okay. You also have, in the story of David and Goliath, where there's a lot of lessons in that story, David, you know the story. Goliath was the giant of the Philistines who was terrifying everybody. And he was calling out for a warrior from the Israelites to fight him. And none of the soldiers wanted to fight him. This was a giant. In my gym, I had an experience of a giant. I was in the gym, and I looked over, and I'm like, oh, my God. You know where they have the bars and stuff with the gadgets that you pull and all that on it? This guy was as tall as the top of the machines. And I saw him, and I went over to him. I said, I hope you don't mind me asking you. I said, you're the biggest person I've ever been in the presence of. He said, yeah, that doesn't surprise me. I said, how tall are you? 7'4". And the guy was lifting weights. 7'4", lifting weights. Anyway, Goliath was a terrifying giant. And here's the point. There was a promise to whoever would go out and fight Goliath and defeat him would get wealth. He would be able to marry the king's daughter. They would be exempt from taxes to Israel, the Israelites. And it says that David inquired of the other soldiers about these benefits. What am I saying? David was motivated by benefits. But he was also had a close connection with God. God was first in his life. So it was not only about the benefits. Gee, if I do this, we're going to get money. I'm going to be have political influence and power. I'm going to, be respected. He had those desires. But he also put God first in his life. So he felt that this would be glory to God also, because the Philistines and this giant were making fun of God, their God, and it would be glory to God. And it would also, he was concerned about his people, his men. So he went out and fought Goliath. You know the story. He killed Goliath with a slingshot. So what I'm talking about here is desires can be inspired by God. The late Eric Butterworth said all desires flow from God. However, you've got to introspect about those desires. You got to look at those desires and look underneath. Why do I desire that? Someone asked Emily Cady, what does that mean? If I desire somebody else's wife or partner, that's okay? She said, no, you don't desire the other person's wife. Your desire, if you look deep down, is for love. That's your real desire. It's for love. And so the prayer is not for that person's wife. The prayer is to know love, to know God is love. See, that's the challenge with wanting something specific and knowing that's what I want and that's who, There's a story of a prayer group where they kept receiving letters about, please pray with me that this guy will be interested in marrying me. And the letters kept coming. So, they prayed for this person. Finally, letters stopped coming. After several months, the letters started coming again. please pray that this guy gets out of my life, right? So you got to pray for discernment about our desires. He recommends creating a list of your desires and thinking about them and going deep. What is it that I really desire from this? What is it underneath? Someone might desire, well, I want to have I want $1 million. Why do you want $1 million? What is underneath that? Is it for status? Is it to impress other people? Is it to feel security? Why do you want that? And when you get down underneath it, then you go, security. You can pray to know God giving you security, knowing that God is my source. With God, I am secure. And I may want to get another job, or I may want to do something to bring in more money. So looking underneath the desires to finding the root and recognizing what's really going on underneath. And once you pray about something, you may find, yeah, okay, I really do want that. It's a wholesome desire. It's a wholesome desire. C.S. Lewis said, our problem isn't that we love things too much, but that we don't love God enough. I'm going to say that again. Our problem isn't that we love things too much, but that we don't love God enough. There's nothing wrong with having things. Nothing wrong with having stuff. But is our connection with Source ultimately what we want? What we have. Do we have that connection with Source? Are we living in that connection? Or do we think that something outside is going to fulfill that connection? Because it won't. It won't. Michael Singer is very good at pointing this out. That's why it's important to reflect about your desires, because they can be motivated by what you're suppressing and what you're blocking. Someone's lonely, for instance. They're lonely. Oh, they feel lonely. It's painful. I got to have a soulmate, or I got to get somebody in my life. Well, you can get that somebody in your life, but that doesn't solve the loneliness problem, which is a lack of connection with the source of love within your being. See, there's nothing wrong with having a relationship, but that person's not going to give us love. And what happens if that person disappears? What happens if they die? What happens if they fall in love with someone else? Then where are you? Back to chasing somebody else to fulfill something that's missing inside of you. Instead of working directly on, okay, let me connect with my source. Let me feel that source. So what we're saying so far is, when you're living in connection with your source, when you are putting God first in your life, then your desires are going to be God working through you. God can work through your desires that are lasting, that continue to come. If you look back on your life, is there some desire that keeps coming up for you, of something you wanted to do, something you wanted to have? Then that is something to look at. That may be God tapping on the door of your consciousness for something that you've said no to because of fear. You've said no to because you're afraid of what other people will think. You said no to because I have limiting thoughts. I'm too old to do that. I don't have the money to do that. What will other people think if I do that? Oh, it won't sell. There's no need for it. Blah, 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 blah. Look at it. That's what Emmett Fox talks about, your heart's desire. Your heart's desire. What is that deep desire that's taking place inside of you? So there's also the place, so there's nothing wrong with wanting to change circumstances. There's nothing wrong with that. We got to pray about it first. You have to look at it and go, can I be happy and content in this situation? Maybe you're in a marriage or maybe you have kids, or maybe there's some other situation where you've made an agreement to fulfill that responsibility, and there's no way you can walk out of it. Not and be in alignment with your deepest felt conscience and heart and guidance. And so you've got to learn to be content in that situation and grow through it. And one way you become content is by looking at the benefits of it. Well, I can grow in my understanding of myself. I can grow in patience. I can learn about this. I can learn about that. You recount the benefits of staying in that situation and growing from it, and learn to be grateful and happy in it. And that can be with a physical challenge. That can be in any kind of situation. And then you discern, no, I think Spirit's guiding me to change this situation. I was in a relationship for a number of years, and the last year of it, I started praying about, should I end this relationship? Because there was so much frustration for me. I mean, and I was really seeking to feel what was there, to be content, to look inside myself, and to just be happy in the situation, and maybe it would shift and so on. And I was really seeking to just be joyful and happy in it. And I was praying about it for an entire year, because I felt like that God had brought that relationship together. And I wanted to honor it and make sure that if I were going to end it, that I did it out of Spirit's guidance. And after a year, I felt this has got to end. Whether I'm right or wrong, it's got to end. And I ended it, and, I think it was a blessing to her, it was a blessing to me, and it opened up new possibilities for both of us. See, but I tried to be content in it first, and I prayed about it. I was willing to make it work if that's what was supposed to happen. But it didn't. And I reached a point where, nope, this has got to end. Sometimes a job is not right. Maybe the coworkers, it's inharmonious. You've tried to work with it in truth. You've tried to be content and happy in it, and you've made your effort to do so, but it's time to leave that job or find another one. Find another one first, So that's where it comes together for me. You can be happy, we can be content, we can be happy, and still make changes. It wasn't making me miserable. I was happy in other areas of my life. I felt like there was no point in moving forward with that relationship. It wasn't it wasn't worth staying in. It wasn't the right thing anymore. God was, through my frustration, was telling me this is over. This is what Clement Stone called inspirational dissatisfaction. Inspirational dissatisfaction. Sometimes something just isn't, you are dissatisfied in it. And no matter how much you've tried and you're praying and you're practicing being content and happy, you're just dissatisfied. And that may be Spirit tapping on the door of your heart with your frustration and saying, you can do something better. You can make a change for the benefit of you and everyone else. And practice being happy and content in it while you're changing it. Be grateful for the growth you're making in that situation. Be grateful for the lessons. Rejoice in the Lord. In all things give thanks. Paul didn't say give thanks for all things. He didn't say be happy that you're in a miserable relationship. He didn't say be happy you're broke. He didn't say be happy things are in chaos. He said in all things give thanks. You can be in a situation and be grateful. You can be in a situation and be grateful. Hey, I'm alive. I know this relationship is frustrating, difficult, but I'm alive. Hey, I'm in a relationship. I'm alive. There's good in my day. There's good in my life. So that's how I bring the two together. Is, yes, practice contentment, being content. Practice being grateful every day. Practice going, hey, I'm alive. And connect with Source, connect with Spirit, live in Spirit. And then listen to the desires that come forth. Maybe they're a desire for a career. Maybe it's a desire for a relationship. Maybe it's a desire for something. Maybe it's a desire for a new outfit. Who knows what it is? Pray about it. Discern. Is this the right thing for me? And then take steps. Move forward. So for me, this is a really wonderful understanding that you can have desires. You can follow your desires. But make sure you're loving God first. Because ultimately, the desire of all desires is to live in the same awareness of God that Jesus Christ lived in and that all the great masters lived in. To be able to walk in joy and walk in love and walk in peace no matter what's going on around you, no matter what's happening in your life. That's the ultimate joy, the ultimate fulfillment. And then when we attain that, we just enjoy everything with God's joy. We enjoy everything with God's joy, no matter what's happening. That, ladies and gentlemen, is heaven on earth. That, ladies and gentlemen, is what he meant by, I have come that my joy might be in you and that your joy might be full.